Won't you tell me? Save me. Won't you tell me? Won't you tell me? Save me.
We talk about what electability is. We as Black people, and I feel like, I don't want to make an assumption by what she meant, right? But I'm going to say what I think.
Oh, I know what that means. We all know some of us know what electability.
White people don't find you tolerable.
Right.
Right.
You're not palatable.
You're not palatable, right? To white people.
Right.
And so this is how older people are moving within politics.
Right.
Right. And by doing that, it minimizes young folks who are trying to come up and be authentic to who they are and blaze a path for authenticity within politics.
Right.
Right.
And who determines electability?
White people.
Okay.
White people.
Okay. Because we hear that term a lot, and I'm like, how can y'all tell who's electable or not? Because I've gotten people elected that people didn't even know.
That's right.
So it's all about how hard you're willing to work. So how dare you tell me I'm not electable?
So it says a Black person can only win. So this is still Rita. A Black person can only win this election with very strong crossover votes. We cannot depend on just Black progressive voters. People of all races rely on heavy experience as well. The winner won't have just a Black agenda, but an agenda for all people. That's the difference in
sip my tea on this.
That's the difference in public perception between you and I. Just keeping it real. All love back to you. One more thing. I didn't find it necessary to let you know I was running because you already knew that I might run. You publicly communicated.
But you said that you were going to tell me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to be the first person to know. But you don't find it necessary. Got it.
You publicly communicated another candidate without saying my name was likely coming out. If I thought you didn't know, and artist clearly did not, I would have let you know as well. But that wasn't the agreement. So I didn't respond after that. As a matter of fact, I didn't respond after that. I didn't talk to Rita again via text message until September 14th of 2021 because I was doing some contract work with the chamber, and they were having her as a guest speaker. And so I emailed her the information she would need. But I didn't respond after that because here's how I think about that, right? When you have a team, let's just say 5 players on the basketball team, every one of those players has to be strong in order for you to be able to win that game.
Right.
Right? And if a player is weak, you sub them out for a strong player.
Right.
You want, especially your starting 5, right? Like you want them to be your strongest players. When you think about community, right, and the people that make up a community, all the players and all the members of that community need to be strong as a group in order for a community to thrive.
Right.
So if you have a basketball team and you have a weak player, what is the coach going to do? He's going to put that player through more training. He's going to get their skill sets up. He's going to invest money. He's going to invest time and energy.
Media training.
Into that one player so that player doesn't drag the whole team down.
Right.
When you think about community, Black people are the lowest on the totem pole.
Right.
Right? We have a long way to go to even be operating at the same level as a lot of other races.
Right, because historically.
So when we talk about a Black agenda is an agenda for all people.
Right.
Because guess what? If that one player does well, everybody wins the championship.
Right.
Right? If Black people are doing well, everybody benefits.
Right.
Because we are the weakest link. You empower the weakest link. Everything, the floor rises for everyone.
Right.
And so that is always how I viewed it. It was never, to me, it was very disappointing that folks were painting this narrative that I was only for Black people. And even if I was only for Black people, we were the weakest link.
Right.
So being
Because
only...
Peoria was named like the worst place for African Americans
during that time. Yes.
Numerous times in a row. So like having a Black agenda and champion for Black people should be the thing that the city does, so we can get off that list, and so we can improve our city demographics. I mean, and poverty, violence, and everything else that we're experiencing.
Because how is not having a Black agenda working for us?
Right, it's not.
You know what I mean? Like when we look at, statistically speaking, when we look at what the condition that our city is in right now, how has electing someone who did not have a plan for Black people working for us?
Yeah. And do you think that she felt like she couldn't be pro-Black and elected because that she felt like you were pro-Black, and because of the fact that you were pro-Black, you could not be elected? Yeah, because, you know, being in a city that has a good portion of Black residents. Yeah. But I mean, like, let's just be very clear and talk about the numbers, which I know you know, right? Like, there's 110,000 people in Peoria. Of that 110,000, let's say 30,000 approximately are Black, right? Of that whole 110,000, around 76,000 are actually registered to vote. Of that 76,000, less than 10% or less of the city's population votes in any election. Right, absolutely. So when we really think about the numbers, right, it's the same 4,000 people on any given election determining the outcome, the voice of the entire city. Right. Right. So it doesn't take much to win a mayoral election. Not at all. Right? Because it's the same people voting over and over. So in order to be able to win any election, you have to be able to expand that electorate. Right? And when you have people who are so oppressed, right? And that's going to be your voter base. You almost need more than a year. Right. To really activate them in the way that you need to, because you have to remove barriers. The barriers that's preventing them from getting to the ballot box. Right. Right. Those barriers are poverty, unemployment, poor education. You know what I mean? All of those things are going to come first, and then voting is going to be stacked. Yeah. It's like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. It's not a priority. It's not a priority. They're trying to live and eat. And unless you can educate people on how their current situation is directly connected to the ballot, it's not going to work. Right. And it takes more than me just coming to you and saying, oh, you're poor because you don't vote. Because guess what? Some of those people have voted and their situation hasn't changed. Right. Because they've given their vote to someone they trusted who then turned their back on them. Right. So it's a layered onion of things that you have to really work through. And once I was able to kind of let the dust settle from the loss and the attacks that I got while I was running, from people threatening my life to having to have security, from the other side putting narratives out there about me. So let's kind of get into that, because we always say all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And you did have a lot of white supporters. I did. You did have a lot of white progressive supporters. I did. And so those were my primary. The votes that I did get came primarily from white progressives. Right. So can we talk about the skin folk and kinfolk and the attacks and the betrayal that this campaign had on you, and the toll, the emotional, psychological, physical, mental toll that this running for elected office had on you? Yeah, I mean, I felt very isolated. I felt like people I trusted stabbed me in my back. I felt like they were also perpetuating this narrative that I was militant, a rebel, that I can't work across the aisle. And these are our people with these dog whistles. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that I can't work across the aisle, which was crazy to me, because as a community organizer, that's all I did.
You know what I mean? So, and then perpetuating this narrative that like I was hypersexual, that, you know, digging into like my personal life, my, you know, who I slept with, like, it was bananas, right? And so while everyone else got to just run,
right,
I didn't. I had to run. I had to worry about my life. I had to worry about being followed. I had to worry about my business being vandalized twice. So I'm dealing with like running for office, but also all of these other attacks, all of these other narratives, and still show up to do what I have to do. And so for me, I always say, you know, everyone else got to just run.
Right.
I had to not go crazy while running, right? Like I had like prayer circles, sister circles, therapy, lots of tears. I'm emotional now,
right?
You know, because you still feel
that pain.
Yes. And so,
and I know for me, my journey, it took a toll on me. I developed anxiety and things of that nature.
I don't like being out. Yes.
Did you have any of that?
Oh, anxiety. So I already.
It's okay. We're gonna get some Kleenex for you. It's okay. It's okay.
I already had. I already struggle with PTSD, anxiety, and OCD.
Okay.
And so.
So this just exacerbated it.
Oh my goodness! I went from having these things, but not necessarily needing medication for it, to then being medicated, and then having my doses increased because my paranoia like went through the roof. You know, feeling like you can't trust anybody.
Right.
You don't know who.
Because these people that you thought you can trust.
Exactly.
Like railroaded you completely and had no regard for it. Like had no sense of like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have did that to her. My apologies. Exactly. No, unapologetically railroaded you. Yeah.
Yes. And so, you know, it was just like, outside of that, it made me like not even want to go outside. You know, luckily COVID was a thing.
Yeah.
And it put me, thank you so much. It put me in a space to where I didn't necessarily have to be around people.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like,
but do you think that helped you, or do you think that it gave you time, maybe time and space to kind of heal?
Yeah.
Okay.
It definitely gave me time and space because I couldn't get out of bed. You know what I mean? And for me, like I said, I've lost a lot in life, right? So it was never about losing. Right. It was about the way I was treated. Yeah. It was about how I lost, not that I lost.
Right.
And so, you know, I'm a human, so I'll get emotional about it.
No, and it's okay because I know with my journey, I developed social anxiety, and I'm a people person, and so like one of my friends, she was just like, she was like, that breaks my heart to hear that you develop social anxiety because you're just such a people person. You don't meet a stranger. Yeah, and I was just like, yeah, I developed social anxiety because it was just being in the media. Being written about, like I had Google alerts about me, so I see all the stuff people are saying. Yeah. And it's like, it was a lot. And Lord and behold, don't go to the comments on the media section because those are just god awful. and then I'm like, wow, this is what the celebrities are feeling like, you know. This is why Mariah got locked up in the hospital. Like, I'm like, yo, like, and then, you know, when Megan Thee Stallion came out with her album and she was like, bad bitches have bad days too. Like, I was like, this anxiety and stuff is really, really, like, I felt like a weight on me. Like, I couldn't. Like, even walking into the courthouse, like, I got anxiety. Yeah. Like, just even showing up to work gave me severe, like, paralyzing anxiety. Yeah. So much to the point, one of our community leaders, a white man, he was like, well, I could come to work with you if you want. Oh. He was like, that makes you feel better, I'll come to work with you. I know exactly who you're talking about too. I was like, yes, that will make me feel better. Because like, I just need to go into the building and get some stuff, but I can't do it because it was just, I felt like people hated me so much. Yeah. And it was so heavy on me. Mm-hmm. And so, like, you know, it did take a great toll on my physical, you know, gained weight, mental, emotional health, like just trying to survive.
Yeah, and see, I lost weight. When I look at the pictures of myself,
I wish that happened to me, but
my face was sunken because I was just like stressing and not eating. Like when I look at those pictures, I'm like, who is that? It doesn't even look like me. Like,
right.
Yeah, I had the opposite. And then once it was all over, I gained 50 pounds.
Okay.
But it did. It's very similar. I didn't want to go to events. Mm-hmm. People were inviting me to stuff. I'm like, I don't want to sit in front of these people. I don't want to be in people's faces.
And it took so much energy to do it. Like, you know, I got to the point where I'm like, if I don't feel like it, I'm not. Like, I'm not going to force myself to do it. I was like, I got to speak to myself like child Jessica. Mm-hmm. If child Jessica don't feel like it, I'm not about to force her to do it. So and if I don't feel like it, I ain't doing it. They can say the dried chicken for another day. And I'll come back to the dry banquet chicken. Like, they can save it for another day. And it's the same people in a room. Like, oftentimes we're seeing the same people who didn't support me, the same people who didn't come to my rescue, the same people who betrayed me. So I don't really feel like I have to dress up and put on a face for them. Yeah. Like, if I don't feel like it.
Sometimes people, not these particular people, but other people don't know what to do. Like, they see you going through it, but they feel helpless or hopeless. Mm-hmm. But I think even in those places, even just to have a person come to you and say, I see what you're going through, I don't know what to do.
Right.
Would have been
helpful.
Enough.
Right.
Yeah, it would have been enough.
But see, I used to cry. Like, so I even stopped going inside the grocery store because I would have random people come up to me.
I don't grocery either.
Yeah, I would have random people come up to me. Oh my gosh, you're Jessica Thomas.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I see what they're doing to you. Oh my gosh, me and my husband pray for you. And I'm like, oh, thank you. But then I'm crying now. Yeah. Now I'm crying. And I was good before because it took me a lot to get out the car and go into the grocery store and hoping that no one will see me. But you know, it took a lot for me to do that. And so, you know, and it was sweet going to the DMV. The staff at the DMV, oh my gosh, we're praying for you. We hate what they're doing to you. And I'm like, and they were like, oh, we didn't mean to make you cry. And I'm like, again, thank you for your support, but you just don't know how much it took me to get out the car. And I just really didn't want anybody to bring up anything.
That's right. And you know, like, think about what that's been happening to me since I decided to do the Mike Brown march. Right. So it's like, I was already, because that march kind of put me on a platform.
Public platform.
A public platform of being a voice for the Black community. Right. And so then I was always on TV, I kept news reporters paid, right? Like, I kept them paid for a good 5-6 years.
Gave them that work.
Right, because I was always doing something. I was always pushing for accountability, right? So I was their story for a long time. And then it just got to the point where I'm like, y'all don't have nobody else you can ask? Because I'm realizing that when I get on the news, I have learned to talk in sound bites when I talk to media.
I didn't learn that.
Yeah, I had
for
to learn
a long
to talk
time.
in
I'm
sound
still
bites
learning that.
because I'm like, if I don't, you're going to misconstrue this to be. I had, I've always been like anti-police abuse. Right. Not anti-police, but anti-system. Mm-hmm. Right. And I did an interview before. They made it sound like I was in support of the police.
Right. Because they only use like 15 seconds of a 2-minute, 3-minute, 10-minute interview.
And so then you have, I understand, I recognize that I am a polarizing person. So when I go out, there's always going to be people who support and love what I'm doing and encourage me. And then there's going to be some real hate. Right. Right. And so a lot of my anxiety, especially when I ran for mayor, and that kind of elevated that platform even more. Mm-hmm. And I was still that polarizing person. My hate went from, I had gotten death threats prior to running for mayor. Right. Right. So that had happened before. But that went from like getting an occasional death threat to now I'm walking around Walmart and a person from Pekin who has been stalking me runs into me in Walmart. And when they do that, they're this close and like in my personal space.
Right.
And so, or I leave a place and I have to make 3 right turns to see if this car is following me. And then when I recognize they are, I have to drive to the police station.
Right.
Until they leave me alone and I go back home. Right. So part of like running for office exasperated that so much to where it's like, I just wanted to stay in the house. I stayed in the house. I ate. I gained weight. I cried.
So what was the switch that helped you overcome? Because you went through a lot during this period too. So you have 3 kids that you're a mom to. So you're a mom. That's a major job. And you went through a divorce in this period too.
I did, yeah.
So what helped you? And a lot of women are going through this. Like, I notice a lot of women in politics, whether they're black or white, oftentimes their marriage dissipates in this. Yeah. And so because it's hard to be a wife, mom, and a public figure to everybody. It takes a toll. Like, it's hard to manage all of it. So the question is, how did you manage it all? And how did you overcome?
Yeah. So my marriage was already on shaky ground back in like 2015. Right. Okay. So it was like a lot of back and forth, which happens in a lot of relationships. So when I was running for office, we were already separated, living separately, just waiting to basically file the paperwork. Right? Okay. All the expenses that comes with getting a divorce. So, so when I was running for office, he was dating other people. I was dating other people during that time. And so I actually met someone who was my current boyfriend now. And, we were dating. So he was supporting me through a lot of it. But I didn't want people to know who I was dating during that time because I felt like them knowing will then add even more pressure onto me. And it would just take the focus, right? Because he's a semi-public figure as well. And so what really was like the switch for me was spending a lot of time in prayer and learning the reason why things happened the way that they happened. Once I understood the why, which was like this was building me for something greater, right? Now, had I not run for mayor, I wouldn't be able to be the national field director, organizing and field director for the National Black Workers Center. Right. I wouldn't be able to have like that foundation and knowledge of like what's happening as a community organizer, what happens when you run for office, like all of these different variables. Right. To be able to take with me into my work. And I also don't think that I would have had the maturity to handle a position like this because I thought I reached a plateau and the last thing that I could do for my city was to run for office. Right. After devoting 20 years of my life.
But you superseded that plateau.
Yeah. After devoting 20 years of my life to Peoria. Right. I'm like, running for mayor is the last thing that I can do. But then God showed me, no, this was like a stepping stone for what you're going to do. Because now the work that I do impacts Black people all over the country.
Right. Bigger impact.
Including Peoria. Right. So
doing hearings at the White House.
Yes. So I was able to talk to the White House Office of Management and Budget about expanding the walk around rule to include Black worker centers or worker centers in general. So that means when workers are being discriminated against at work, they're able to have an advocate with them. Come to their job site, walk around with OSHA, talk about what is not happening, what the employer is doing, and they know they have that protection against retaliation and all the other things that employers try to do. So fingers crossed that expansion will include worker centers and we'll be able to go into a lot of the workplaces of the low-wage Black workers that we're working with and advocate for them in that way as well.
Yeah, amen. And hopefully expand that to all wages, because that's needed everywhere.
And you know
but we got to start small.
You know what? We at the Black Worker Center, we focus on low-wage Black workers who are not covered by unions, who are often like meat packing, restaurant, who are often forgot about. But if the expansion happens and that discrimination happens and you're making six figures, right? You're still included in that. Right. So it does benefit, goes back to helping the lowest, benefits, everybody.
That's good. So with that, we're going to piggyback into sharing a bit about your background and your role at the National Black Worker Center, like what you do, what led you to that role. Share a little bit about that so people can hear a little bit about that.
When I decided to run for office, I basically took a leave of absence from my job. So for like 4 months, for 4 of those months.
That was the Grassroots Collaborative.
Okay. Yeah, for 4 of those months, I was just like heavily focused on, it was like the last 4 months leading up to the election. I was just heavily focused on running and doing what I have to do. And shout out to the Grassroots Collaborative, because they supported me so well. Like, they had like a support system around me. They supported me wanting to like leave work and just focus on the campaign. But once the race was over, I knew that going back there was not my calling anymore. And so I had actually the Will and Power, which you talked about, co-founder was praying for me a lot. And she would put together these sister circles of my other Will and Power sisters, and we would get on Zoom. And, they would just speak life into me and encourage me. And so when this was over, she was like, I told her I was going to start looking for work or trying to figure out what I was going to do. And she was like, well, Shanika, which was one of my Will and Power sisters and also one of my good friends, just became deputy director of the National Black Worker Center.
Wow.
And they're hiring for like a lot of positions. And I think you would be good for this, which was the incubator lead organizer. And that would be to work to create more Black worker centers around the country.
Right.
And so I was like, I haven't done that before, but I have transferable skills. So let me just apply. And I applied, got hired. The race was over in April. By June 1st, I was hired. And I worked in that position for 2 years. And I built the incubation program from scratch because it didn't exist before. And this, like, no one had an incubation program to build Black worker centers. And so I was trying to take these like dynamic visions from these two geniuses, which is Tanya, the executive director, and Shanika, the co-executive director, and build out what was in their head. And so I worked on that for 2 years, built out a phenomenal program, if I do say so myself, and then got promoted to the organizing director. And then I hired someone in my current position. So they're currently doing the work that I was doing. But yeah, like that is what led me to this space. Running for office, losing that race is what got me my current position.
Wow, blessings.
Yeah. And so had I won, I would be, mayor of Peoria, making $50,000 a year, but maybe very fulfilled in my work. I don't know. But, now I make double that. And I do work that impacts Peoria still.
Right. In other places. So kind of trying to, close this up a little bit, but what would you tell the 20-year-old Chama?
Let's see.
What advice would you give 20-year-old Chama?
20-year-old Chama had no kids, no husband, still in college, trying to figure it out. I would tell her, and she was very naive and fearful of a lot of things. So I would tell her that it's going to be okay. trust yourself, because everything that you need to be successful is already within you.
Okay.
And I would also tell her, like, you are going to impact so many people just by existing. Absolutely. So you don't have to, Amen. You don't have to, you know, overthink it. You don't have to overtry. All you need to do is continue being you.
Okay. And so what advice would you give to 30-year-old Chama? You're 38 now, so we're kind of getting to that 40-year-old range.
Yeah.
What advice would you give 30-year-old Chama?
30-year-old Chama was married with 3 kids and wanting to break outside of the box that her city put her in, mm-hmm. right? Like, I wanted to find myself. I knew that I was a creative, and I didn't just want to be known as the activist. Right. I wanted to be known for all the things that I could do. And I would tell 30-year-old Chama that life is going to calm down. Like, things are just going to smoothen out. And you're going to be okay. Your kids are going to be okay, because I think I was worried about, like, finances, kids. If, you know, mm-hmm. your kids are going to be okay. Your love life is going to be okay. You're going to find someone who completes you, who, you know, loves in the way that you love. And you're going to still impact the lives of people.
Amen. So what advice would you give, I would say, childhood Chama? Childhood Chama, what advice would you give her?
Baby Chama wanted to be an actress.
Okay.
Baby Chama was always, well, more specifically, I used to always say, I want to be in the TV.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
and you accomplished that?
Yeah. I used to always say, that? I want to be in the TV. I want to be in the TV when I was little. And this was, you know, little Chama, 8 years old, living in the projects, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I just used to be like, I want to be in the TV. And the advice that I would give little Chama is that you'll be in the TV, and you'll do it in ways that will leave a legacy and a history behind for your kids and their kids.
Okay. And so, you know, just a token, a nugget, like this podcast is to empower women and to share our stories and let other women know who may be on the same journey that it's mm-hmm. okay. So what advice would you have for those women that may be in the midst of their storm right now?
Yeah. The advice that I would have is that this is like your building, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is creating your foundation. This is what is going to build you into the person you said you wanted to be. Mm-hmm. So, like, a lot of times when we pray or, you know, we speak to whatever higher power it is that we believe in, we just want the outcome. We don't realize everything that it takes to get us to what it is that we say that we want.
Right.
So if you're going through a storm right now, it's because you need that in order to be here at your outcome and be able to handle that level of responsibility or that platform that you're praying for. Whether it's finances, whether it's, you know, a better job, whether it's, you know, I don't know, something that impacts the world, right? Mm-hmm. Like, everything that you're going through has to build you to that. Right. And what, you know, and it's coming, you know, but you have to keep pushing through. Yeah, sometimes when you're going through some stuff, you want to give up. Mm-hmm. Like, I had plenty of times where I was just like, I could just pack my stuff up and go. I don't mm-hmm. have to say bye to nobody. I can take me and my kids, disappear a whole nother city, even another country, and just live, you know, because there's people who do it.
Right,
and I used to always say, like, God, how come I couldn't be just a person who just lives? They ain't thinking about politics. They ain't thinking about the state of Black people. They're not trying to help people. They vacationing. They on yachts. They making their corporate money. Why did you make me like this?
Okay.
Right? So I think, you know, this was my path. Like, I always, since I was a kid, I always wanted to do something that was meaningful. Mm-hmm. I always cared about people. I always wanted to help people. And so when you are going through a storm, you have to think about where you're trying to go.
Right.
And really reframe how you think about it. Because I used to always say, why is this happening to me? Mm-hmm. Now it's, what is this trying to teach me?
Right.
And what is the gift in this?
Right.
Right.
And speak to, because Chama's been through some storms. Like, I know her storms.
Yeah.
Y'all don't know her storms. But, like, I want you to kind of speak to some of those storms, because some women probably see you as who you are today, mm-hmm. and not seeing Chama, who's been through a whole gamut of things.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on Fortitude Rising. Our conversations about the journey of Black women in America were enlightening and empowering. Please stay connected with us on social media to keep the dialogue going. Your voice matters, and every challenge is an opportunity to rise. Fortitude Rising, signing off.
Won't you tell me?